Tony Jones covers the 76ers for The Athletic, and he joins us right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tony, welcome in. How you doing today?
I'm good. How you doing?
We're doing pretty good, and I want to start with you because we had a conversation before you were coming on about, it feels like this team, despite the success they had, starting 4-1 on the year, it kind of feels like, at least from my eyes, Tony, that they're still learning how to make all the pieces work. And it's like, we know what works. Maxi's playing on an incredible level. Edgecombe has been great. Kelly Oubre's probably having the best start of his career right now. But it still feels a little clunky with Embiid and some of the other guys on the court. So what are you seeing from this offense so far?
Well, I mean, I think that's fair. I think that the offense has been clunky at times, especially when Embiid is on the floor. And, I think there's intention to get Embiid the ball when he's in the game. And I think one of the reasons for this is because of the minutes restriction, because, his teammates and everybody, involved with the Sixers know that he's only going to be on the floor for so long. You want to be productive in those minutes. You want to take advantage of those minutes. So I think at some level, Maxey doesn't really take a backseat because that, getting Embiid the ball isn't going to change what he does. It's not going to change his calculus, but it changes things for VJ Axcom a little bit. And it changes things for Quentin Grimes a little bit. They don't get as much usage just off the periphery as they would if Embiid is off the floor. I think it's a good problem to have. I think that, I know that Sixers fans look at it differently, and I think it's a good problem to have for the simple reason that I think Embiid has proven that he's still a franchise-level offensive player. My question for Embiid isn't what he's shown offensively. It's what he's shown defensively. I think that his level defensively, excluding last night, I thought he was actually pretty good defensively last night, but I thought his level defensively overall this season has been, pretty significantly down from what his expected level is for himself. So, I think what the Sixers have right now are two franchise-level offensive players, and they have to find a balance to that. They have to figure out a way to make that work. They have to figure out a way to make those two styles work because there are two styles. And in some sense, you're trying to marry two timelines together. But that's a good problem to have. I could see if Embiid just wasn't himself offensively. I think that's clearly not the case at this point. I think Embiid is pretty close to himself offensively. So you just have to figure out a way to make both of that work.
One thing I'm wondering with Embiid, you mentioned about how, he's starting to come around on both ends of the floor a little more, is that would it make more sense, depending on the team that you're playing, obviously, matchups, styles make fights, right? So it's like, Adem Bona, I would like to see more of him and Embiid on the floor together because maybe Bona can give Embiid a little bit more of less of a pressure on him to be that guy protecting the rim. And the way Bona is playing, Tony, I almost wonder if you need to start looking at that guy more, I don't want to say starter minutes, but maybe giving him more opportunities on the floor.
So it's something that Nick Nurse and the Sixers have looked at. And here's the issue with it. If you have both of them on the floor, because most teams in the league, their fours play on the perimeter. You can't have Embiid guarding on the perimeter, so he's still going to have to be the center defensively in that alignment. And the second thing with Bona is that if you play him too many minutes, he's going to foul, and he's probably going to foul out. That's pretty much his biggest weakness is that he fouls too much, jumps for pump fakes like a lot of young shot blockers do. And the thing with Bona, which actually kind of works because Embiid would be on that alignment. Sorry about that. Is that Bona isn't the greatest rebounder on the face of the earth, but if you have Embiid on the floor, Embiid is a pretty good rebounder. it's something that I think that Nick Nurse wants to try out in the regular season. They tried it in the preseason. The one preseason game that Embiid did play, him and Bonus started together. They've done it in practice. They started to scrimmage together, the inter-squad scrimmage together, playing together. So, it'll be interesting to see if they go to it. I thought that last night would have been a good point to use that, especially when Josh Minot was on the floor, because he doesn't have to be guarded on the perimeter. So you probably could have gotten away with playing both of those guys together. But I do think that it's something that's intriguing with Nick Nurse and the Sixers, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see it at some point this year.
Hey, Tony. Alex Berardis here. Before the break, we were talking about how the Sixers, they don't have enough size, in our opinion. And now a guy that I've been looking at to, kind of take a role here who hasn't yet is Janai Bruin, our second-round pick. He got assigned to the G League, but he's a, 6'9", 6'10" forward. Like, why haven't they given him a shot? Like, I'd like to see what he can do out on the floor.
In my opinion, it's because Broom is a center. And I think he's more of an undersized center than he is, a like-sized power forward. I don't think that he can move defensively on the perimeter. I do think that offensively he can play power forward just fine because, he's a super skilled kid, really good in the DHO game, really good passer, knows how to play, very, very good basketball IQ, extremely good basketball IQ. And, if you play him, you'll notice that he's kind of always in the right place at the right time offensively. The problem is you still got to guard. And I don't think that he can guard on the perimeter. And the problem when you have to play the five is you have to be a rim protector. I think the best thing that you can do, the thing that you can do to kind of mitigate that is play him with a Dembona, because then, you can have the spoils of what he does offensively and how skilled he is offensively, but you can have a rim protector. You can have a rim protector in back, especially if he gets beat off the dribble. The thing, going back to your point where you don't think the Sixers have enough size. I don't think right now. I think their problem right now is they don't have enough size on the wing. This team really misses Paul George. If you watch the Sixers this week, you would have seen Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jaylen Brown last night, Keyshawn George on Tuesday night in Washington, all have their way with the Wizards. These are with the Sixers. These are jumbo-sized wings in the Eastern Conference that the Sixers need to guard. And if the Sixers miss Paul George in one aspect, it's the fact that they don't have their own jumbo-sized wing to match up with the jumbo-sized wings of the Eastern Conference. So I think that that's where they're really lacking. They don't have PG, and for as long as they don't have PG, they're going to be really, really, really small on the wings, and it's going to be a problem.
Tony Jones from The Athletic joining us here on Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN FM, streaming live on YouTube and X in the Dr. Squatch virtual studio. You can follow him on the X platform at T Jones on the NBA. Tony, you just mentioned Paul George, and that's a curiosity question I think everybody has, right? Which is, how exactly is he going to fit into this? And you just called him a jumbo wing. So when Paul George comes back, whenever that is, are you expecting him to be getting a lot of run at the so-called 4 spot, or do you think that they're going to try to maybe move him up and down the lineup with different combinations?
Well, I think they'll do both. I think, in my opinion, the starters will probably be him at the 4 and Kelly Oubre at the 3, or Kelly Oubre or him at the 3 and Kelly Oubre at the 4, one of the two. But that's the beauty of Paul George. You can play him at least offensively anywhere from shooting guard, small forward, power forward. But what this team needs from him is they need him to be on the floor defensively. And I think the calculus has changed with Paul George. Last year, this team needed Paul George to be an offensive engine. I think that if the 5 games that we've seen of the Sixers prove anything this year, is that they don't need Paul George to be an offensive engine. And, I think that could release actually some pressure from Paul George. Hey, dude, we don't need you to score 25 this year. We need you to have 15 to 17 points, 6 to 7 rebounds a game, 5 to 7 assists a game. And I think Paul George can do that. And I think they need him to make 38 to 40% from 3-point range. And I think they need him to defend both forward spots. And I think that he's capable of giving the Sixers just that. And if that's what the Sixers need, then I think that this could be a different Paul George than we saw last year.
I think that brings me to the other question about, whose minutes does he cut into when PG comes back? Like, who's the guy who gets relegated to bench minutes?
Well, I mean, they're starting Jabari Walker at the 4. So, you could start there and just kind of work your way down. I mean, I don't think that we need to overthink this. I think Paul's going to play 30 minutes a night when he's fully healthy and, he's fully integrated into the lineup. And I think that, you're looking at a team right now that's stretched thin minutes-wise. Tyrese Maxey is leading the league at 43 minutes a night. VJ Eshkom is playing 38 to 40 minutes a night. Quentin Grimes is playing, a ton. Kelly Oubre is playing a ton. I mean, these are, when Paul George and Jared McCain get back, they can take, minutes. Obviously, Justin Edwards probably drops out of the rotation. Jabari Walker probably drops out of the rotation. But they can also take, 3 to 5 minutes from Maxey, 3 to 5 minutes from VJ Eshkom. They can take a few minutes from Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre as well. And there's still plenty of time for those guys to integrate themselves into the lineup or get integrated into the lineup. So, there are places where minutes can come from, and there are places where chunks of minutes can come from, simply because they're starting a two-way at the power forward slot. Their superstar 5 is playing on a minutes rotation, and their backcourt is probably playing too many minutes, and at this rate, will probably wear out by December or January.
Kelly Oubre, I think, is a guy that we have to highlight here, Tony, because he is a guy that has been inconsistent at times in his career. He has been a guy that we know what his potential is. We know how well he can play, but he's been inconsistent at times, not just for the Sixers, but in the past. I think this is the best version we've seen of Kelly Oubre. What have you seen from him? Because I'm at the point now where I'm almost like when he's not on the floor, Tony, I'm looking at, like, where is Oubre? We need Oubre in some of these situations.
I think that this is the best that Kelly Oubre has ever played that I've seen of him. I'll give you a funny Kelly Oubre story. When I covered the Utah Jazz for a number of years. So I believe this was 2017. Kelly Oubre came to the Jazz for a pre-draft workout. And, we got a chance to interview him after the workout. And, he was coming out of Kansas. And, we asked him, hey, where do you see yourself for your career? And he legit said, well, I see myself as a combination of Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. Said it on the record. Like, that's what he said. And to this day, I told Kelly last year when I spoke to him, I said, one day I interviewed you and you said you were Kobe Bryant and LeBron James all wrapped into one, and it was the greatest interview of my life. And he started laughing. But, I think the gist of this is he's now 29 years old, right? And I think that he's matured a lot as a player and as a human being. And I think that he's shown a lot more discretion than he used to on the floor. I think that he used to be prone to really bad shots, kind of hero-type plays off the dribble that results in bad turnovers. And, he still has those moments, but I think he's eliminated about, 80% of those moments. And, the fact that he's been, able to play under control, kind of be a connector, kind of get into the lane and score and kind of fill in the blanks and make big shots. Like that shot that he hit against the Boston Celtics last Wednesday was huge, and he's hit a couple of huge ones since. He's taking on defensive assignments. He's just quietly been, a leader in the locker room, a leader on the floor. He's been magnificent, and I can't say enough good things about how well he's played through 5 games so far this year.
Tony, VJ Edgecombe, I noticed last night in particular, was doing a lot of time spending just sitting in the corner. Not a lot of off-ball movement, not a lot of anything, honestly. And when he would get the ball, he'd always kind of look for that pass-first mentality. I would like to see him maybe put the ball on the floor a little bit more, just kind of give the Philadelphia 76ers another guy to facilitate the offense with. I feel like Edgecombe could be a little bit more aggressive for this team to succeed.
Yeah, I think, some of that is what we talked about earlier with Embiid on the floor. Edgecombe's usage goes way down. I think you can look at Tuesday in Washington. He took his first shot with about 4 minutes left in the first half. I think last night against Boston, I think he went the entire first quarter without much usage, but then in his second stint in the second quarter without Embiid on the floor, I think he scored like 8 points, right away in the second quarter. So, the thing that you have to remember about Edgecombe is at the end of the day, he's still a rookie. I know that he doesn't play like a rookie. I know that he carries himself like anything but a rookie, but he's a rookie, and when Embiid is on the floor and when Maxey are on the floor, the offense is going to run through both of those guys, and as well it should, because those are your two all-star, all-NBA level players. When Paul George is back, the offense is probably going to run through those 3 guys, and VJ is probably going to be your 4th option. It doesn't mean that he can't still score 15 to 17 points a night, being a 4th option. And, I think that, obviously he had the 34-point opening night, but he's been solidly in double figures throughout the season. He hasn't had a game. I think his low scoring game was against Washington on Tuesday when he scored 14. But he's used his uses efficiently. I think he was 7-11 from the field last night. He had several big shots, got out in transition, made some big plays in transition. But, here's the other thing. He was the offensive hub on the floor in what I thought was the deciding point of the game when they took Maxey out, and this was a one-possession game. And, for those 3 minutes, it went from a one-possession game at the end of the third quarter with about 3 minutes to go to by the end of the third quarter, it was about a 12-point game. And that was when VJ was in the lineup where he was the number 1 option of that lineup. So there are still things to learn for him. Things, it's still going to be a learning experience for him. But he's undoubtedly right now, if I had to vote, he'd be my rookie of the year. And I think that, what he's shown from a dynamic perspective on both ends of the floor is real and sustainable.
He's Tony Jones, covers the Sixers in the NBA for The Athletic. Give him a follow on the X platform at TJones on the NBA. And, of course, check out all of his coverage and be a subscriber to The Athletic like I am. Just go to The Athletic. I do the annual subscription, Tony. I think it's a lot easier than having to do the monthly tap in. But, everyone's got their own preference. But definitely I say subscribe to The Athletic for some of the best coverage on not just Sixers in the NBA, but all of sports. Tony, appreciate you jumping on. Safe travels to Brooklyn. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you for having me.